There is a plant creeping through the cracks of sidewalks, hugging the edges of garden beds, flattening itself against hot concrete like it belongs there. Most people bend down to pull it out, some spray it, almost no one eats it. That plant contains more omega-3 fatty acids than salmon, not per pound, but per leaf. It has fed humans for thousands of years, outlived empires, crossed oceans without ships, and today it is dismissed as one of the most common weeds on Earth. This plant is not rare. It is not fragile. It does not require fertilizer, irrigation systems, or climate control. It grows where other plants fail: compacted soil, salty ground, drought-stricken land, abandoned lots, the margins humans ignore. And yet nutritionally, it outperforms foods we ship across continents and oceans at enormous cost. 4,000 years ago, people were already saving its seeds. In northern Greece, around 1050 BC, someone carefully stored tiny black seeds in a clay vessel. They were no bigger than grains of sand, barely a millimeter across. When archaeologists opened that container 3,000 years later, they didn't just find seeds, they found a confirmation. The same plant was still growing outside, between stones, exactly where it had always grown. The seeds were recognizable. The plant was unchanged. By the 7th century BC, these seeds appear in religious sanctuaries, not as weeds, but as offerings. By the 4th century BC, farmers were being instructed to sow it deliberately in spring alongside their most important crops. This was not desperation food. This was planned agriculture. The Romans cultivated it across 3 continents. Medieval Europeans ate it routinely. In 1288, when Milan compiled a detailed list of everything the city consumed, this plant appeared not as a novelty, but as a staple. It was ordinary, reliable, expected. At some point, that changed. After 1492, this plant crossed the Atlantic, or at least, that's what written records suggest. But archaeology tells a different story. When European settlers documented it in Massachusetts in the 17th century, it was already old news. Seeds found in Ontario date to the 1300s. Seeds found in Kentucky date to 800 BC. Long before European contact, indigenous communities in North America were cultivating it alongside sunflowers, squash, and seed crops in what is now called the Eastern Agricultural Complex. 2 populations separated by an ocean, with no contact, no shared language, no shared institutions, both decided this plant mattered. Both saved its seeds. Both built food systems around it. That coincidence deserves attention. For most of modern history, nutrition science was focused on scarcity. Calories, protein, survival. Fat was feared. Then, in the mid-20th century, something strange emerged. Some populations were eating high-fat diets and not dying of heart disease. Others were following the same basic dietary rules and suffering massive cardiovascular mortality. In 1960, a physiologist launched a long-term study to understand why. Over 12,000 men across multiple countries were tracked for decades. Diets were recorded, blood samples frozen, deaths counted. Patterns emerged that challenged everything experts thought they knew. On one Mediterranean island, farmers consumed diets where over a third of calories came from fat. According to prevailing theories, heart attacks should have been common. They weren't. Cardiovascular mortality was astonishingly low, lower than anywhere else measured. For years, the explanation focused on olive oil. Monounsaturated fat became the hero. But decades later, when researchers revisited the original frozen blood samples with new tools, they weren't looking for cholesterol anymore. They were looking for omega-3 fatty acids. The results were unsettling. These farmers had dramatically higher omega-3 levels than populations eating more fish. something else was supplying it. That something else wasn't exotic. It wasn't imported. It wasn't expensive. It was a plant they ate daily, in salads, stews, sautés, and indirectly through animals that fed on it. That plant was purslane. When scientists began analyzing it directly, the numbers looked wrong. Fresh leaves contained hundreds of milligrams of alpha-linolenic acid per 100 grams, multiple times more than leafy greens considered healthy. It wasn't just better, it was in a different category entirely. Then came a finding that shouldn't have existed at all. Land plants are not supposed to produce EPA, a long-chain omega-3 fatty acid associated with marine life. That pathway belongs to algae and the fish that eat them. But trace amounts kept showing up in purslane samples. At first, contamination was suspected. It wasn't. The plant was doing something no one expected. And that was only the beginning. Compared to familiar vegetables, purslane delivered dramatically higher vitamin E, beta-carotene, essential minerals, antioxidants, and compounds involved in cellular repair and circadian regulation. It wasn't just nutrient-rich, it was dense in exactly the molecules modern diets lack. Clinical trials followed. Patients recovering from heart attacks were divided into groups. One followed standard dietary advice, another ate a Mediterranean-style diet rich in omega-3 sources, including purslane. The difference was so stark that the study was halted early, not because it failed, but because continuing the control diet became ethically questionable. Deaths dropped sharply, not just from heart disease, from all causes. At this point, a reasonable question emerges. If this plant is so resilient, so nutritious, so historically important, why isn't it everywhere? Why do most people learn its name only when being taught how to kill it? The answer has less to do with nutrition and more to do with control. Purslane does not behave like a modern crop. It does not respect neat rows. It does not wait for permission. It grows fast, spreads aggressively, and produces enormous numbers of seeds. Each plant can generate hundreds of thousands. Those seeds can remain viable in soil for decades. Even small stem fragments can root and become new plants. It survives heat that shuts down other crops. It tolerates drought that kills them. It thrives in salty soils where agriculture usually fails. Attempts to eradicate it consistently fail unless conditions are perfect, and even then it returns. You cannot patent it. You cannot make farmers dependent on buying it every year. You cannot easily engineer it to stop reproducing. Modern agriculture depends on predictability and ownership. Purslane offers neither. And that sets the stage for something even more unexpected. Because in trying to understand why this plant refuses to die, scientists uncovered something that rewrote the rules of plant biology entirely. That discovery comes next. For decades, botanists thought they understood the limits of photosynthesis. There were variations, adaptations, clever tweaks, but nothing fundamentally new. Plants had already explored the available options, or so it seemed. Most crops rely on what's called C3 photosynthesis. It works well in mild conditions, but wastes water and collapses under heat stress. Corn and sugarcane evolved C4 photosynthesis, which handles high temperatures better, but still demands consistent moisture. Desert plants took another path entirely. They use CAM photosynthesis, opening their pores at night to collect carbon dioxide when the air is cool, sealing themselves during the day to conserve water. The trade-off is speed. CAM plants survive, but they grow slowly. These systems were considered mutually exclusive. Each came with costs. Each solved one problem while worsening another. No plant, according to textbooks, could escape that trade-off. Purslane didn't get the memo. For years, scientists noticed something odd. This plant grew faster than typical cam plants, but survived droughts that crippled C4 crops. It didn't behave like it was choosing between growth and survival. It was doing both. At first, researchers assumed compartmentalization. Maybe one part of the leaf ran C4 during the day, while another part switched to cam at night. That would still fit within known biology. Strange, but acceptable. In 2022, a research team decided to map gene expression in Purslane at a cellular level, hour by hour, day and night. What they found forced them to reconsider everything. The same cells were running both systems, not switching, not alternating, not dividing labor across tissues. The same cellular machinery was performing C4 photosynthesis during the day and CAM photosynthesis at night, with metabolic products feeding directly into one another. Enzymes were being repurposed on a schedule, doing different jobs in the same space depending on the time of day. This wasn't an optimization, it was a loophole. No other known plant species does this. It breaks a rule biologists thought was absolute, that these photosynthetic pathways were incompatible at the cellular level. The plant wasn't choosing efficiency or resilience, it engineered both. That single discovery reframed Purslane from a nutritional curiosity into something far more significant. A biological outlier with direct implications for food security in a warming world. Because while scientists debate how to engineer drought resistance into crops, Purslane already thrives on a fraction of the water corn requires. While soybeans shut down photosynthesis above certain temperatures, Purslane accelerates. Where wheat fails due to salinity, it keeps growing. It completes its entire life cycle on rainfall levels that would kill most staple crops outright. And it does all this while producing food dense enough to sustain human populations. That combination, nutrient density plus environmental resilience, is vanishingly rare. Modern agriculture wasn't built to reward that. It was built to reward uniformity, scalability, and control. Crops are valuable when they behave predictably, mature on schedule, and depend on inputs that can be sold alongside them. Seeds that reproduce endlessly and thrive without assistance don't fit that model. So Purslane was reclassified. Not officially banned, just quietly reframed. It became a weed. Once that label sticks, an entire machinery activates. Extension offices publish eradication guides. Homeowners associations mandate removal. Lawn care companies advertise chemical solutions. Herbicide manufacturers formulate products specifically to target it. The irony is hard to miss. A plant that resists drought, heat, and poor soil is treated as a threat in a world increasingly defined by drought, heat, and soil degradation. Chemical warfare followed. Compounds originally developed for wartime defoliation were repurposed for suburban lawns. New formulations appeared, promising total control. Kill the roots, kill the seeds, kill anything that comes back. It didn't work. Purslane adapted faster than the chemicals designed to eliminate it. Its seeds persisted in soil for decades. Its growth habit hugged the ground, avoiding exposure. Its regenerative ability meant even damaged plants returned. Eradication attempts succeeded only temporarily, under perfect conditions. And even then, failure was the most common outcome. From an industry perspective, that's unacceptable. A plant you can't control can't be monetized easily. You can't lock it behind patents. You can't require annual seed purchases. You can't engineer sterility without destroying the very traits that make it valuable. Compare that to every other major omega-3 source. Fish stocks collapse unless managed aggressively. Fish farming requires enormous infrastructure and constant inputs. Supplements oxidize, go rancid, and must be manufactured, bottled, marketed, and sold. Flax requires processing and still degrades quickly. Purslane grows freely, everywhere humans live, without asking permission. That makes it economically inconvenient. Culturally, it became invisible. Generations were taught to see it as messy, invasive, undesirable. Children learned to pull it, not taste it. Recipes vanished from Western cookbooks. Knowledge that once passed through kitchens and gardens broke off. But not everywhere. Across much of the world, purslane never disappeared. It remained in everyday cooking, in stews, salads, pickles, and flatbreads. It kept its place as food, not novelty. Half the planet never forgot what the other half was trained to ignore. And now, as climate models converge on the same conclusion, that the regions where conventional crops fail first are semi-arid zones with rising heat, attention is quietly returning to plants that already survive there. The question is no longer whether purslane matters. The question is whether we can unlearn what we were taught to destroy. The future of food will not look like the past. Climate instability is already redrawing the map of what can grow where. Rainfall is becoming unreliable. Heat waves are becoming normal. Soil is becoming poorer, saltier, harder to farm. The crops we build civilization on are failing under the conditions we created. Purslane does not fail there. It thrives. It grows flat against the ground to avoid heat stress. Its leaves store water. Its metabolism adapts hour by hour. It finishes its life cycle on a fraction of the rainfall modern agriculture demands. And while doing all of this, it produces one of the most concentrated nutritional profiles ever measured in a leafy plant. You don't need to wait for policy changes, new technologies, or scientific breakthroughs. This plant is already here. It's in gardens, sidewalks, driveways, and abandoned spaces. The barrier isn't access, it's recognition. Learn to identify it. Thick red stems, smooth, succulent, paddle-shaped leaves. Tiny yellow flowers tucked close to the ground. Break a stem and it's juicy, not fibrous. Harvest it young. Eat it raw for a lemony crunch or cooked like spinach. Let some go to seed. Save them. Share them. Every person who learns to see purslane as food, not a weed, takes back a piece of agency. A reminder that nourishment doesn't only come from systems designed to sell it. The most resilient solutions are often the ones we were taught to erase. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.